the evolving digital economy.
Ladies and gentlemen, a warm round of applause to a very, very bright panel this evening. I'm quite sure at the MMA we strongly believe that understanding this wave is very critical for each one of you, and also preparing to navigate this is more important, and responsibly navigating is still more important, and the technologically imperative leadership is all the more important. So with all this, over to Mr. Ramprasad.
Thank you, Group Captain, and good evening to all. Welcome to this evening of review on the coming wave. How many of you use AI today? Very obvious question. Everyone uses, okay? So this is the first time I thought I'll choose a technology book. Normally it's management book, emotional intelligence, leadership and all those things. So first time we thought, okay, why not? Because technology is playing so much of a role in our lives. I don't know how many of you, we are one of those lucky generations. We have seen through a lot of technologies. When I passed out of my college, access to computer was the most difficult thing. In fact, we had mainframes where we need to book in advance and go and work with the mainframes. Then 80s saw the PC revolution. You know, PCs came to the desktop, and at that time I remember a lot of strikes happening in banks and public sector companies saying computers are going to replace jobs, so don't allow computers and all those things. See where we are today. Okay, that was a big revolution. And second revolution which I saw was the internet. First email and then followed by internet. Internet completely changed the way we lived. I remember the first mobile phone we used, like a brick Nokia. Very little things could be done, but it was only meant for communication. Then today, can you live without a mobile? It is almost doing everything, and it has disrupted everything else along the way. Your recorder, your tape recorder, your cameras, everything got swallowed by mobile disruption. Now, these were the past waves. So this book, which I chose, I was grappling around a few other books. So I asked Venkat, listen, I want to really talk on how technology is affecting us. Can you suggest a book? And he says, the coming wave is all about it. It's not about AA, it's overspoken already. It's about how these technologies are going to transform our lives and what is it going to do for us as we move along. From the time the book was written till now, really it has progressed much, So the central premises of the entire book by Mustafa Sulaiman, the author, who is the founder of this company called DeepMind, who is one of the well-revered company. And he has also founded another company called Inflection AI, which was bought over by Microsoft. So his book is, I thought it's a very simple, small book of 300 pages, but it's not so. It's a very, very intense reading, 14 chapters divided into 4 parts. Right from, he deals with all the technologies which has come in the past, right from the phone, invention of phone. When the phone was invented, it was meant for blind people. And you see how the phone is used today. Okay, so the technology could not be contained and moved along. Similarly, explosives, when it was invented, it was meant for railways and mines. And it found its way to warfare and, terrorists and all these things, so it's a danger. So the central premises of this particular book is revolved around 2 main technologies, which is artificial intelligence and synthetic biology. While it is going to build a lot of wealth, going to influence a lot of the areas of our lives, that is the positive side of the technology. At the same time, it can become a containment issue. You cannot contain the growth of this particular technologies. Can go and fall. If it falls into a wrong hand, it can be threatening our own existence. That's what he's saying. So technology as a wave, one of the things is it's an omni-use technology, which means these technologies can be going into all the areas like medicine, security, materials, energy, all the areas it can be applied. And it's hyper-evolution, which means the first version is not equal to the second version, it's not equal to the third version, because they are keeping on upgrading themselves. So whatever gaps that are there currently, it's quickly learning. And it is almost trying to emulate the human intelligence. So earlier we have seen robots replacing the manual labor to be more productive and efficient. So if you go to a car manufacturing unit or any manufacturing unit, you will see more and more robots coming in because repetitive manual labor is replaced by robots. Now AI is going to replace the intellectual labor. Okay, which means there is a threat to the intellectual labor. People who are doing mundane work, repetitive work, secretarial work, all those things can be replaced by AI. And there is an asymmetric impact. What we mean by this is this can get into, because of the democratization of the technology, people have access to it. So even a small set of people can have access to it and pose a big threat to the nations. That's the another thing. And the systems with increasing decision-making latitude, reducing human sight, which means more and more it will start not only aiding humans, but slowly emulating humans. And that's what we're moving towards. And because of these features, containing them is going to be a big challenge. That's what the book says. So what are the dangers and risks of these technologies? While Suleiman doesn't dismiss the potential benefits, he is adamant that the risks are unprecedented. Some of his major concerns are biosecurity and engineered pathogens. So people can create new pathogens which can cause disease like COVID kind of a thing anytime. Okay, autonomous warfare, state destabilization, surveillance states. AI could magnify the power imbalances, empower authoritarian regimes, and disrupt social order. These are all the possible risks. Misinformation, social unraveling, institutional breakdown, which means rapid tech change may outpace political systems, eroding trust, amplifying inequality, and enabling large-scale manipulation, which means that there will be a social disorder, false information going around and completely influencing the thoughts of the people around. Then loss of control or alignment failures. AI systems could diverge from human values and reinterpret instructions in harmful ways. So he underscores that containment is conceptually harder because it's already in a very advanced stage. You cannot contain it. It is going to grow. While the benefits are there to be seen, the dangers are also equally there, which needs to be contained. That's what he's coming up with. So what is the containment challenge? He's concerned about his key proposals include how it could be contained is safety and alignment research, how to give greater investment in technical research and build AI and synthetic biology systems that are robust, interpretable, and aligned with human goals and not against the human goals. Auditing and oversight mechanisms, independent audits, external red teaming, evaluation of deployments, which ensures that AI doesn't go out of control and it's always regulated. Then slowing rollout and controlling choke points, incentive alignments for firms, greater competence in government. Government should be more competent in handling these evolving technologies. International cooperation and norms, building treaties, standards, shared protocols across states and organizations so that nations are not disrupted. Then cultural and political engagement, encouraging transparency, public debate, activism, checking overconfidence and complacency. So all this is what Suleiman cautions, that no single policy is sufficient. These measures must be sustained in combination in a narrow path between over-regulation and under containment. So the book is authoritative. Suleiman speaks from direct experience in leading, he's one of the leading AI research, giving the narrative first-hand weight. It's ambitious in scope. It eliminates blind spots often neglected in AI discourse, particularly the biotechnological dimension and the speed with which these domains may converge. So there are a lot of criticism also. It says it overstates the threat. This threat is not actually like what is mentioned in the book. His policy proposals are in place, underdeveloped and unrealistic. The wave metaphor, which is evocative, has been critiqued as simplifying the complex, non-linear nature of technological change. He actually starts the whole book with a wave, how a tsunami can come and, a huge deluge, like we call it pralayam, that kind of thing can happen because of the technology. So, all he says at the end of the book, what I take away is definitely there is an urgency in looking at these emerging technologies, primarily from the containment point of view, more than the growth. We cannot stop the growth. It's going to be rapidly evolving and growing, making a lot of wealth and progress. At the same time, the dangers and risks which can arise out of this technology should be contained, and we should be cautious. And that's what we are going to review today. So I have with me two real technology experts, or wizards, I would say, who are with me, John and Venkatrangan, who are, both of them have spent a lot of time with technology and emerging technologies. So we are here to learn quite a bit from these two people. So my first question to both of you is, what is your first view of the book after reading it?
Thanks, Ram. Thanks, MMA, for the opportunity. So before I go into the book, I'd like to set the context. Let's start with something optimistic. The book was written by Mustafa Sulaiman, like Ram said. He's a practitioner. He is the Microsoft AI CEO. There are many CEOs in Microsoft now, all reporting to Satya Nadella. He was earlier he co-founded DeepMind. DeepMind, as you know, won last year Nobel Prize for, not DeepMind per se, DeepMind. Other co-founders won Nobel Prize for AlphaFold. That's one of the most complex problems in biotechnology, because the proteins in our body, you take virus, bacteria, everything consists of proteins, and these proteins can fold in multiple ways. Again, I'm not a biotechnologist, but there can be millions of ways in which they can fold. And each fold means something very different. And you can't be doing those in a lab and doing it. So the first time these AI models were able to solve these protein problems to say what is possible, what folds are possible, what folds are unlikely to happen. That's why they won the Nobel Prize. So he's co-founder of that. And he also won AlphaGo, which I'll come to in a minute. But before that, the optimistic note, this is all the introduction Ram gave, and if you pick up this book, it might sound like a world politics or a geopolitics book, because there's a lot of geopolitics obviously discussed about China because he's in the US. The US-China rivalry now in AI and all that. So it and also the biotechnology, the pathogen threat and all that might be giving you a pessimistic view about the whole thing. But actually he's a very optimistic guy, and it's the Microsoft AI and lots of new products they are doing. So the idea is to say these are available, and you might all say, how is it all relevant to me? The leaders of this nation, the scientists should be reading it rather than me as a business person. The relevance is we are living in a very uncertain world today. Something happened somewhere, and we know there is a gentleman sitting in the US who sees news and he reacts in very interesting ways. So in such an uncertain world, and 6 months back we thought US is our biggest friend. Today it probably is, probably not, we don't know. So which we wouldn't have none of our risk analysis would have factored that 6 months back or 1 year back. So the idea this book says is just look out also on what is AI doing, what is biotechnology doing, so that you can also try to factor it in your organization and in your career. You're trying to choose a career. 5 years back or even 3 years back, we could have blindly said, choose a computer science degree as a B.Tech or a BE and your son or daughter should be fine. Today, I'm not sure if I can advise somebody, you should be learning computer science. So that's the world we are living in. So that's the context this book should be approached, in my opinion. And coming back to the book per se, there's multiple things he talks about. One, he goes on to a long chapter on the biotechnology part and all that, synthetic biology as he calls it. But I like to focus on the AI side of things. He was talking about how this find worked in DeepMind. One of the things earlier, if you say AI, artificial intelligence as a term, was coined in 1956 by John McCarthy. in Dartmouth College in the US. From that, it's grown into multiple things. And this is 3 years back when ChatGPT came. That's not the first time AI actually came. We have all been using AI in the last 10, 15 years in our everyday life. We haven't noticed your SMS spam filter, your email spam filter is all machine learning, your credit card transactions being spammed, and so many, or for that matter, Netflix or YouTube movie recommendation. The reason why you can't stop reels, you will say, I've got 5 minutes, let me watch one reel. Nobody in living human have stopped with one reel. It's more addictive than your highest cocaine concentration and all that. It gives you dopamine release that way. The algorithm learns what are you likely to watch next, even before you watch. So in these aspects, we have been using AI, and then also many other ways. Like I said, AlphaFold, and all that AI has been used in the last many years without we knowing. The last 3 years, what has happened is there's an interface through which we can communicate with this AI, and suddenly it feels very personal. And we all like to command people and rule them or administer them. And suddenly ChatGPT seems to be doing whatever we ask it to do. But all that has changed is there is a friendly chat interface that is coming. So coming into the book, he talks about how in DeepMind they were trying to keep this rule-based. Rule-based is very simple, like how we used to program. We used to tell somebody, you hire a junior, you'd say, oh, when this particular form comes, this is the limit you have to give, and so on and so forth, rules that you lay out. That's been in which AI systems have been developed. Then suddenly they went into a statistical model where they gave the data and told the AI system, this is the input, this should be the output. You figure out how do you want to manage so that you get this particular output when this input is given. I'm oversimplifying it, but that's the idea. Data self-learning mechanism started coming in. So you were saying when in DeepMind, they wanted to learn the self-learning, and it sounded very silly, but very simple also, but very elegant. They asked it to play computer games. They asked this AI algorithms to play computer games. They hooked it up to an Atari system and then asked it to just play, figure it out. You figure out the rules. When we play, like the saying goes, games came first, rules came later. Somebody somewhere, probably in Britain, would have played cricket. And after some time, they would have set rules. That's how we play cricket with our friends, right? Where in our house yard, suddenly after the second over, we'll say, oh, that wall is fourth. No, it's 6. So rules come later. So similarly, he talks about in DeepMind, they gave the Atari system hooked up to the AI systems and said, just play. Figure out, the goal is you should get the maximum score. And the AI systems playing multiple thousands, billions of times, figured out the rules of the game. Nobody thought it the rules. That is how they played Atari, and then they used the same technique to do the AlphaGo game, which I suppose, I haven't played the Chinese game, supposed to have quadrillion or n number of moves. So earlier they were teaching this to play. That's how IBM chess was won, Deep Blue and all that. But then this time they said, here is Go, you just figure it out. So the system itself was playing thousands, millions, billions of times and then learning what is the best way it can play so that the best outcome can come. So he says that is the way we have learned this. This is the positive side of things, how they were able to evolve. The negative side of this, if the same AI system is asked to act a particular electricity grid or whatever, today drone warfare is happening in Ukraine and all that. So in the first go, it's not able to go through it. It then learns from that mistake and then continues it in different mechanisms, self-learns it and keeps moving. That becomes very powerful. So these AI systems can be both powerful for good, they can be powerful for the bad as well. That's what he talks about. And he gives various examples. None of the technology systems per se set out to be evil. For that matter, Twitter and Facebook was to connect people. Mark Zuckerberg, believe me, he genuinely started to connect people. He didn't start to do all the things that we are claiming him to be doing today. But it so happened when we connect people, the inherent capabilities of humans, both good and bad, are coming in. And today, Facebook is where Facebook it is. And then we are talking about so many other social media. Per se, social media is all technology is it's a double-edged sword. Whenever you have technology doing good, there is a very inherent possibility there will be a negative side of things. So I'll stop here.
Thanks, Venkat, for a very in-depth insight into the AA. Now let's hear from John about his first views of the book. Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank my good friend Ram for inviting me to be on this panel. I was here last month among the audience to witness the celebration of the 50th episode of Read and Grow. It takes some amount of hard work and consistency to put this month after month, right? So let's give a good round of applause for Ram Prasad Srinivasan, Sangeeta Sumesh Shankaran, and Babu Krishnamurthy, who are not here. So these three are the pillars of this event, and to MMA for organizing this and giving the platform. Now, before I start judging the book, I want to talk about the cover a little bit, which is to talk about Mustafa Sulaiman, right? As Venkat pointed out in detail, he is no ordinary person. So he is the co-founder of DeepMind. The company, they invented AlphaFold, AlphaGo. I'm reminded of this Tamil proverb, "Pillaiyum killi vittittu thottilayum aatradhu." Right? So you create powerful technologies and then you talk about the dangers of it. However, it is better to hear about those dangers from a person of the caliber of Mustafa Sulaiman, right? Because when we talk about AI, it is a very, very sharp, double-edged sword. You can do some really amazing things with it, and you can do some very destructive things with it. So it is important I think it is a new chapter, right? That people who develop powerful technologies are themselves coming and warning us about the dangers before they happen, right? The book is not titled The Past Wave or The Current Wave. It is the coming wave. So it is important for all of us to read what the book says and understand what is this warning that he's trying to tell us. It's a very detailed book. And as Ram pointed out, it talks about the evolution of technology, every big disruption that has happened, and what has happened because of those disruptions. So it is a very good read. And through the questions, we will go more into it. Over to you, Ram.
Thanks, John, for that brief view. In fact, I have been using AI for the last 1 year as a trainer, and my presentations, most of it are very customized, very focused. And even here, probably 1 year ago, the introductions were manual. Right now, you see the introductions beautifully done using AI. So that's how it's the positive side of it. So now, I see almost every day there is a growth in this direction. Only 2 months ago there was ChatGPT 3, then ChatGPT 5, and there are so many tools emerging, and that's a rapid growth of this. So do you really believe it is possible to contain these technologies from disruption? What is your view on that? Like, because of the unprecedented growth and the development is happening with no regulation per se, as per my understanding.
See, if the question is a very simplistic one, can we contain it? The answer is going to be, again, very simplistic. You can't. The cat is out of the bag. Today, many of these models you can run on your local machine. Latest iPhones you can run on the models locally. So once something is out there, and the internet never forgets. Let's be very, very, very clear. And especially when you have an embarrassing photograph, internet never forgets it. You can delete the Twitter, you can delete the Facebook post. Somebody, somewhere, there is a lady in the US, I believe, who died about 10 years back. She was recording all the TV channels continuously. She had 30 VCRs, 77,000 hours. This lady, this grandmother later, when she passed away 10 years back, she donated 77,000 hours of video cassettes to Internet Archive of all the TV channels airing in the US for almost 30 years. So, in that, remember how many embarrassing moments of people on stage, news readers, everything would have been there. So, like that, internet never forgets. So, coming back, these models are out there. The know on how to make these models are out there. So, it cannot be contained in that traditional sense. US has been trying, the book also talks about in very big detail. The last October 22 onwards, Joe Biden's presidency wanted to stop or delay or contain, as he talks about, exporting NVIDIA latest chips. NVIDIA is this greatest company in the humankind, I suppose, after East India Company, from 300 billion or even less than that. Today it's probably $3 trillion, or that was 1 hour back. Today it could be 4 trillion. Next minute it can be 5 trillion. We don't know. And this company doesn't have any manufacturing plant. It doesn't manufacture anything of its own. It only invents and then gives it to TSMC in Taiwan and manufactures and all that. So coming back, containment is going to be very, very difficult. But yes, but as the book again talks, it's not impossible. We have done nuclear. We have seen the Oppenheimer movie and all that. People thought nuclear war, we won't see 2000. We won't cross that millennia but somewhere up there, some gods really like humankind, and we have crossed that 50, 60, 70 years and we are here. So somehow we were able to contain nuclear things. So it is only somehow. We know the Cuban crisis and all that. So the book also talks about that similar, it seems very hopeless, but we shouldn't give up. We should try to do it. And he talks about multiple mechanisms in which, including people movement and cultural movement. I think the cultural movement is very important for organizations like yourself. When you're talking about implementing AI in your organization, I think the biggest danger or biggest accelerator also is going to be cultural. So coming back in that aspect, containment seems very impossible, but there can be very innovative ways, and it's very important we start thinking about it, because it's super important these technology doesn't land on bad guys' hands. So that's the point.
So there could be national threats as well. So what is your take on it, John?
Yeah, so my answer to the containment problem is a yes and a no. So let me elaborate on that. When ChatGPT 4 came out, right, so these numbers were made popular that they spent about $100 million in training the model, and they used top-of-the-line NVIDIA GPUs. But then we all heard the news about DeepSeek, right, the model from China that took over the internet. Apparently, they spent roughly about $5 million, and the performance was on par with OpenAI's ChatGPT. Now, I would not be surprised if from 100 million that comes down to 1 or 2 million, and instead of a company, an individual can research and then come up with better models, right? So, it is not possible to completely contain the technology itself, but as Mustafa says in the book, we have history of containing technologies. For example, nuclear technology, we have contained it very well, but he also talks about cars, flights, and the medical industry, right? So people who create medicines, there is a lot of regulations on the do's and don'ts, and also on how flights are operated. So there can be guardrails put in, there can be governance put in to control how this is operated, but there is a lot of effort that is needed.
Definitely agree. In fact, as of now, we are driving the cars. As we move along, cars will drive us, right?
Yeah. So that's the hope for the last 20 years.
Yeah, but we are getting there. So next question to John. So where do you think is the right balance lies between encouraging innovation and enforcing control, especially in fast-moving fields like AI and biotechnology? Should governments lead this effort, or should industry self-regulate? Where do you think is the balance?
Yeah, so let's talk for a minute about whether this technology itself is useful or not, right? So Venkat, in his introductory comments, he talked about AlphaFold, about protein folding, right? So if you want to research about diseases and how do you bring about medicines, you need to understand how protein folds. That's the basis of creating new medicines, by understanding diseases. Now, before this AlphaFold came in, right, throughout the human history, we have been studying protein folding, and we were able to solve for about 100,000 proteins before AlphaFold. After AlphaFold, we have already understood protein folding for 214 million proteins. Think about these numbers: 100,000 before AlphaFold, 214 million after AlphaFold. Now, this is going to help us come with medicines for diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, and a lot of the other diseases for which we don't have complete cure set. So it's definitely a very powerful, technology, right? And at the same time, in this book, Mustafa talks about, viruses like Ebola, right? The Ebola virus is highly fatal. A large number of people can die if they get it, but it is not highly transmissible. That's why it is not spread a lot. But if you take viruses like Omicron, it spread very fast, but it was not fatal. That is why many of us survived, even though we got COVID. Now, there is a possibility that people use AI to come up with viruses, invent new viruses, which can spread easily, but also be fatal. So, in terms of governance, now it has to be in multiple levels. So, I'm in the technology industry, right? So I'm a little biased because I've been in the technology industry for 30 years. Personally, I don't like too much of government involvement in what we as technologists should or should not do. So there has to be overarching frameworks by the government, but largely the industry itself has to self-regulate. That's what Mustafa says as well. So it has to be a combination of policies from the government that make sure that there are guidelines on what can and cannot be done. But every company, every industry that's involved in AI, they should have self-regulation on what is right, what is not right, what we should do, what we should not do.
Thank you for that answer. Venkat, do you think government is competent enough to contain this at this point in time?
Which government?
Governments.
Governments, okay. Probably there's no difference between governments around the world right now. Okay. In terms of governance, Mustafa also talks in this book, it's going to be very challenging because he talks about his own personal experience. In 19 years, he was working in the London. He's a Britisher. Part of his family is from Syria, so he's a mixed race. So he talks about that. He's born, brought up in London. Now he's in the US. He talks about how in the mayor office, he was looking at the simple things, but they could be very easily solved, but they took a lot of time and a lot of bureaucracy. He felt that nothing is changing. But then when given a certain push, things seems to be moving. So he says there's a contradiction in the way governments actually work. You can't be without them. None of us want government, but we can't be without them as well. So that's the contradiction there. So in the book, Mustafa talks about there should be regulation, especially pinning down on the responsibility when it comes to real world impact. When it's medicine, obviously there is mechanisms. You can't release a medicine today. Whether AI invents a medicine or human invents the medicine, or I don't know anything about medicine, I can be a YouTube influencer saying something, eat something, or I can say I drink hydrochloric acid and COVID will go, and I suddenly become a scientist. But at the end of the day, something happens, then the responsibility has to be with me. Governments still have those tools. Just because something happens by AI doesn't release anybody out of their responsibility. So governments do have a role to play, but we need to realize that they will always come delayed. So by the time technology is invented, put to use, these companies should be free to innovate, but at the same time, he's also talking about self-governance in a different way. He says they should be acting responsibly. He's also talking there should be a new type of corporations coming in. Today, the corporations we have are either profit, non-profit. There's nothing in between. That's why the old Sam Altman and famous problems we see, whether it is a profit company or not profit company, all that confusion happening. So he's talking about a new type of corporation that needs to become. And personally, you ask me, I believe we are in an AI bubble in terms of investment. Though that's not the question, that's my personal take. I'll leave it there.
Okay, so with AI power,